Hey there, lovely people, and welcome to the latest edition of the Finnovator. This one's kind of special to me. My journey to doing what I do now, away from just standard consulting to financial planning businesses, really began with getting involved in the tech startup scene, specifically with a business called Corporate to Freedom. A glorious experiment, which unfortunately didn't succeed as a business, but it taught me a lot about the way that Silicon Valley start businesses, and it led me on a route to being part of a consulting consortium, if you like, that wasn't hitting the mark for me, to starting my own brand in our dairy and really forging a path which ended up being a glorious adventure, resulting in programs, working with some great people. This particular session I ran with Netwealth. It was a funny story behind this one. I was actually due to do this with the Netwealth guys. They were all set up, and on the day I turned up at the office, gave them a call, and they said, "Great, what time are you going to be here?" Now, at the time, I was in Sydney, still am, and they were in Melbourne. So you can imagine they were a little bit shocked to hear that I wasn't going to be in Melbourne that day, but it was kind of the beginning of the realization, that it didn't really matter to do this kind of stuff where you were, which is something that I'm really glad to have coached a lot of businesses on with the remote engagement of clients. But anyway, this is, I think, a really key part. If you are sort of a business owner and you're wondering about how to free yourself from the constraints that a lot of traditional businesses have around marketing, around time, around technology, around your marketing, I think this is a really good primer on how they do that whole starting businesses in Silicon Valley differently. Because it really is so different. Whether we're talking about lean startup or agile or customer-centric product development, the lessons that I've taken and I turned into coaching have led me down a path which I'm really, really happy it did long term. It's been a very rewarding journey. I hope you enjoy it. Particularly, I'd love for you to take out of it. Is there anything in there which you think you could load your business up that would maybe change the way that you went out and found your market, or alternatively, maybe change the way that you created your service models? Because I think if you think about the difference between the Fortune 500 50 years ago and the kind of businesses that seem to sprout up from nowhere to global domination pretty quickly, it's hard not to look at those businesses and wonder, how would they do it differently? And that's exactly what this is about. There's some real fuel in here, which kind of gives you an outline as to where our program, where the coaching with, and where everything's come from. So I hope you enjoy this, applying a Silicon Valley mindset, and I'll hand over to me to take you through the journey. Let me tell you a bit about what to expect from today. What I'm going to be sharing today is just a few concepts that we're working on with our coaching clients through our leverage program. And the promise that we make to them is to help them build a business model over the course of 12 months that enables them to toil less, to generate greater reward, and to have a better resource business to make it happen, which ultimately reduces the amount of stress on them. Let me tell you a bit about my style. I love this stuff. So I'm going to go quite quickly. I have been accused of talking quickly, so I'd love it if you could pop your fast ears on and stay with me. I may occasionally tell an odd, but it will be a relevant story, so please stay with me. The other thing is I'm not going to pull any punches here. I'm going to share with you stuff that's working for us and our clients, and I'm even going to touch upon some of the dumb stuff that didn't work. And I'll also talk about the things that still need to be overcome if you're going to make this stuff work for you. In terms of content, my goal today is really simple. I'm going to pull 3 concepts from a bag of knowledge called, or a toolbox if you like, called high growth tech startup. And much of this is rooted in Silicon Valley thinking to show you 3 of a total of 40 key principles that underpin a leveraged advice firm. Because what I'm talking about today is really about building an advice firm that smashes paradigms. I'm talking about how to build the kind of business that doesn't have to solely rely on third parties to give you leads, or a business that doesn't have to work hard to convert suspicious prospects into clients, but instead has them calling you. A business that doesn't have to scrabble around to deliver on promises and uses technology and people to create really significant client advocacy, and the kind of business that attracts talent in who stick around and really make an impact on a business. So the concepts we're going to touch upon today are 3 things. I want to touch on, number 1, how to automate your engagement so you can increase the velocity with which your prospects come to you, and also increase the momentum with which they go from being clients to advocates who refer and endorse. The second thing we're going to talk about is, I think, one of the biggest challenges many firms have when it comes to getting the best out of their outsourced and in-source staff. We're going to touch on something called the plug-and-play system. It's also known as the Hollywood system, which is basically about how you can punch like a big business, yet continue to do so on a small business budget. And finally, we're going to start talking about how you use your time, which when you start to get to the level where you've solved the lead flow and business revenue problem, is probably the most challenging problem of all. And I'm going to share with you a really big time suck and a productivity hack straight off the bat to solve it all. And at the end of it all, I'm going to give you that final bit in the puzzle so you can bridge that all-important gap between, that's a great idea, to it's done and dusted and we're starting to get the benefits of it. Sound good? Excellent. Okay, so let's kick off with our first question. What at the moment is the biggest thing that bugs you about being an advisor or running an advice firm? What's holding you back? What's slowing you down? What's dragging you down? What's stopping it from being the experience you want it to be? Kim's saying finding clients is the big thing that's holding it back. Maritza says getting new clients. Shane's not happy with his licensee. Paperwork, what's the right technology? X-Plan admin, CRM's coming up again, workflow tracking, compliance, time management. Okay, so there's some common threads which are coming through, which are around technology. It's around not finding the time, finding clients. Great. So here are some questions I want to ask. And firstly, I want you to write on a piece of paper, what was your revenue last month? And make this a typical month. If you had a particularly unusual or a low or a high month, then kind of give me your average revenue per month. Write it down on a piece of paper. So in other words, your ongoing revenue plus your upfront revenue. What was it? So when you've got that written down, I'd like you to write just underneath it, what would you like it to be? What do you want your revenue to be? What's the difference between the two? What's the difference between the revenue you've got on a monthly basis and the revenue you want? So second question, this is just for you. So write this down on a piece of paper. First question is, how many hours did you work last week? And you know what, if last week was a particularly busy or a particularly quiet week, just give me your average number of hours, write them down on a piece of paper that you work per week. And when you've got that number down, I want you to write down underneath it, how many would you like that to be? Okay, final question. What percentage of time of that time that you just, we spoke about last week, did you spend doing the things you love and the things that are going to drive your business forward? What percentage of that time per week did you spend doing the things you love and will drive you forward? And then underneath it, write down what percentage of time would you like it to be? So here's the thing. So the gap between those numbers is the cost to you of not getting this sorted out. Frankly, it's a bit like those clients. You had them come in, they don't take your advice. And the longer you continue not to address these, the more it's going to continue costing your business and probably compounding. So the goal from this webinar is to apply what we're talking about today to bridge that gap, the gap between the revenue gap, and to do it whilst addressing that second and transition that percentage gap as well. And this is the reason why we're anchoring this stuff in startup thinking. The essence of startup businesses is scale. The idea here is generate huge value for the end user, resulting in exponential revenue growth, but to do it in a way that isn't overly reliant on the founders and enables those founders to move away from what they used to do to get things started towards what they want to do to make an impact. It's that whole thing about Zuckerberg at Facebook doesn't do any coding anymore. He works in other areas. He's moved away. And I really want this for you because, frankly, if you don't close those gaps, then your ability to have that impact on people is always going to be constrained. So let's kick in. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share as many case studies as I possibly can. And we're going to talk about this first topic, which is about automating engagement. So I want to start by sharing with you a story about a client of mine called Adam. And I'm going to call this case study 20 leads from 6 conversations. And bear with me, I'm going to explain what it has to do with automating engagement. So I've been working with Adam for some years now. It's kind of second time we've worked together. We worked together a while back on his pricing and then re-engaged a little bit later to widen the scope of our engagement. And before we met, Adam had the experience of running a seminar. And the seminar, as I recall it, it was something around how to make your superannuation work for you. And he put it out there. He spent some money on a room. He marketed it, but he found out that he just didn't get take up. So he ended up spending a bunch of money, not really getting people along. And he formed the view that, seminars, they're a bit rubbish. Anyway, we met a little bit later and we looked into what Adam had done. And I challenged him a bit. And we went into detail about, who are you trying to attract here? Which turned out to be IT contractors in the ACT area. So naturally, we started to talk about how to market what he was doing. And really, there were three problems that Adam had that were bubbling under the surface. The first one is he really wanted to generate a flow of new clients, which was going to feed his business. The second one is because of some stuff that was going on, he just couldn't rely on a referral partner to do it for him. They kind of had issues of their own, so it wasn't an option to lean on them to give the referrals. And the problem three was he just didn't want to spend a bunch of money to, entertain an empty room. So the real problem that was going on here was frankly that there was nothing of value to offer. Adam was putting something out there and people just didn't see value in it, so they weren't coming along. And the question is, what's the easiest way to get people to come along and to take an interest and fill a room and engage with you? And the answer to that question is just to get a speaker to talk about something that your target market are really interested in and they need and is relevant to their situation. So what we started to do is a bit of a research piece. We put together some questions, and what we were really trying to understand was what was the biggest concern this particular niche target market had at this particular point in time. So we could help fix that problem, sort of position the business right next door to that problem and really get attention. So the story goes, we started talking to some of Adam's clients and we had a list of 10, but a really interesting thing started to happen. During these conversations, because we were asking all these questions, people started to gravitate towards taking an interest in Adam and what he was doing. There's a fascinating psychological effect called the Benjamin Franklin effect. Go and Google it. And it's the idea that when you start asking people for small favors, they naturally start to take more of an interest in what you're doing. So off the back of that, something weird happened. He ended up getting from 6 conversations referred to 5 other people, just like the people we were having conversations with, as well as he got referred to a potential referral partner. Now, a lot of this was down to Adam's skill in unlocking the conversation and asking them to put him in contact. But ultimately, they were happy to put them in contact with other people. Anyway, that was the first thing that happened. He ended up generating business and contacts off that. But the second thing that happened was a theme started to emerge. And in discussions with these clients, we found out that a big concern at this particular time was upcoming government cuts and by extension, potential redundancies. So we had a possible topic of interest, how to make yourself indispensable as a contractor. So what was really super cool is we ended up talking to one of these contractor clients and she turned around and said, look, hey, I actually happen to be a speaker. And what I talk about is basically how to increase your hourly rate while making yourself indispensable. So he ran this event, which was literally her speaking about how to make yourself indispensable and increase your hourly rate at the same time. And the event was sold out. I think they got 50 or 60 people registered and they got a really, really good turnout rate. And off the back of that, they ended up getting 15 leads that came through and have a conversation. So off the back of this research project, they generated 20 conversations with clients. And the main thing here, I think the main point of this story is they did it by focusing not on what they wanted to talk about, but by focusing completely on what the client needed. So what's this got to do with automating marketing? Well, here's the thing. There's a guy in the US called Dean Jackson. And he kind of does what I do, but in the real estate space. And he's got a theory called cheese and whiskers. It's brilliant. He says that clients, prospects, they're like mice. And his rationale is pretty good because mice are actually used in lab experiments because of the way they think. They tend to think a bit like us. And he says that mice are basically motivated by 2 things, cheese and avoiding cats. I know in the human condition, cheese is good stuff. It's happiness, wealth, security, love, all that awesome stuff. Cats, bad stuff. Hassle, expense. It's potentially sometimes even being told or being exposed to the uncomfortable truth. Now, here's the thing. What we don't realize as advisors is we're cats. Frankly, most people out there would rather do anything possible to get access to the information you have rather than to take charge of their financial situation, rather than having to sit down and talk to a financial advisor. Many people just aren't ready for that step. But if you look at most advice businesses, what's the way they market? Well, they market to turn around and say, hey, come and sit with us. Let's have a first appointment. And all the client hears is that's a meeting with a cat. I mean, the name itself, first appointment, it infers a second appointment. So in many ways, you're kind of crippling yourself from the start. So the point here is you've got 2 tools at your disposal when it comes to bringing clients into your business. The first one is sales, and the second one is marketing. Now, personally, if I'm given the opportunity, and I'm sitting opposite a prospect, and I have the opportunity of either, giving them a brochure that tells them what I do, or talking to them, asking some questions. I will talk to them every single time. Selling someone on what you do, asking them questions, finding out what their problems are, and working out whether you can help and articulating it back to them in a way that makes them realize, you know what, we could work together. That is a better conversion tool than any marketing brochure. But here's the problem. It's time consuming. If I have to do that process with every single person I meet, it's not a fast process. And I think the key idea to get hold of here is that marketing is about delivering your message and selling is about what you do when they call you. So what Silicon Valley does really, really well is they realize that if you have to sell your proposition to every client that comes through the door, you're going to have to bring in armies of salespeople to make it happen, which by definition is inefficient and often restricted to growth. So instead, what the Valley do is they focus on building something that, instead of focusing on building something that needs to be sold, they try and focus on building something that people want. And even if they have a product that requires a sale because it's complex or it's high cost, like advice is, then they're priming the client to understand what the solution is and why they need it so well that by the time the conversation starts, the conversion's half done. Now it's just about clarifying how it applies to the client, answering any unanswered questions and inviting a decision. The problem is if you market the way you sell, it ends up sounding a bit like this. Hey, we can help you solve your lifestyle goals. We can help you solve the financial problems holding you back. We can help you get clarity. We can help you get security, peace of mind. It's true, but from a marketing perspective, in a world where there's so much noise out there, it's kind of weak. Very few people wake up in the morning and go, hey, I want to get my lifestyle objectives in order today, or I want to achieve security. Some do, but the majority don't. What they do is wake up in the morning and realize I have a need. I have a problem in my life right here and now that I need to get sorted, and I'm motivated to do it. And I really need to get the best rated mortgage. Or, oh my God, someone at work just dropped dead and I need to make sure that my family are protected. Or my money is flowing out of my bank account and I don't know why. I need some help to get this in order. These are problems that you can market. You can go out and say, do you have this problem and would you like to solve it? Would you like this outcome? Let me tell you a bit about our system for solving it. The model that we work with is based on the idea of getting the prospect and leads to contact you and come in ready to make a decision. But hang on a moment. What on earth has this got to do with automation, Stu? Well, here's the link. If you can get this one concept right in your business and you can start focusing predominantly on what clients' needs are or what wants are, as opposed to leading with, what you want to talk about or telling the client what they need or what you want to deliver, it gives you the ability to automate much of what you do. Let me kind of show you what I mean. So we have a 5-step process that we work with all new clients through called the client flow map. And this is basically where we map out, that question about how are prospective clients going to become aware of your business and get to the point where they end up being fee-paying clients. And let me just walk you through how it works. So up here at the top of the funnel, we have the general public. And down here, we've got 2 offers that most advice businesses want to make. The first one is, hey, come on board and become a client. And the second one here is to become an ongoing client that is also an advocate of the business. So the first step, and I think just to elaborate, I think one of the big problems that many advice businesses have, or the mistakes they make, is they try and convert the general public straight over to becoming a client, having that conversation. In actual fact, the first step is we need to make them aware. We need to get their attention. And there's a various different channels you can do it. Social media is one, strategic partnerships are another, client referrals are another one, direct advertising. But the moment they become aware, they become suspects. It doesn't necessarily mean they're ready to engage, but that potentially they've had a look at you and I've got a bit of awareness of what you are. At this point, though, again, a lot of businesses lead by saying, come in and become a client. But for many people, it's still too soon. So the next step is we want to make them engage. We want to make them take action with you in a way that's non-threatening, because we don't want to have the cat around. They go from being a suspect into a prospect. And the change that occurs is they've made a decision to willingly give you their details, usually an email in exchange for a valuable piece of information, insight, often via your website. In our program, we call it creating a lead magnet or a value bomb. It's usually some piece of downloadable content, checklists, short ebooks that enables them to get an understanding of what your expertise is. At this point, they've got an understanding that you know what you're doing, and more importantly, the things that you do are relevant to them. So we want to get them to go from engaged to get into a convertible situation. And they go from being a prospect to a lead. by giving them a low intensity way that they can take the next step. Typically, it's via a webinar, a seminar, or some other event that is ideally economical in time or delivered to multiple leads at the same time, which gives them the opportunity to take your information and realize that it's time to have a conversation with you because they're aware both of their own issues and the fact that they need a solution, of which you are the catalyst and the most obvious source. And we call this a conversion event, combined with what we call a follow-up and nurture strategy. So they go from being a lead to a client because they enter your sales process, and then they become an ongoing client that pays you the fees that you deserve and you love working with. So that's the process, but let's chat through the numbers. So let's start at the end. How many advocate clients do you want? For most businesses, the answer is probably around 80 to 120 ongoing clients who love what you do and pay your fees per advisor. So to do that, let's say you begin by converting, roughly 50% of those clients who walk in the door to advocates. So ideally, if that frankly is a low number, and ideally, if you're applying this stuff really, really well, you're going to be getting to a place where that's a lot higher. But let's say that means you need 200 appointments with clients per advisor, not counting any drop-off or anything like that. So the big question is, how many leads do you need to generate? Well, let's say for a second we forget about manual lead gen and we start looking to automate some of this stuff. I think you're probably 1 in 4. So you need about 800, which then leads you to say, well, in order to generate 800 leads, people are willing to get into a convertible situation. How many prospects do you need? Let's say it's about 4,000. 1 in 5 then made that decision, which means we're probably, in order for you to generate those 4,000, you probably need to touch, I think, around 20,000, which is based on the idea that 20% of Australians get advice. So you need to make 20,000 people aware of your business per advisor for you to grow at the speed you want to. Now, if you have to do all this in a manual way, what impact is that going to have on your business's ability to grow? It's going to be pretty slow, especially when you realize that your future competition is looking at ways of doing this via automation and other scalable marketing, right? So it's time to get a bit smarter. And the real bigger problem with this, frankly, is usually not that you're not a great advisor or you don't have a great business. Mainly, it's simply that you don't have a marketing system, or you've got a marketing system that probably isn't going to stand the test of time because it doesn't consistently and predictably convert suspects into clients and advocates. You see, there's a number of ways to market. Each has its own pros and cons with regard to the speed to do it and the effort. But the second part of this, beyond that, is I think about automating, is a lot of businesses, I tend to think that their job is done when the client comes through the door and they're on board. And I'm going to suggest that if you're letting clients come on board and make up the decision for themselves as to whether they got value, you are missing out on a massive opportunity. Let me explain more. There is an awesome book called Slow Down, Sell Faster by a guy called Kevin Davis. And he puts forward this really infectious idea that it's not the sales process that matters. It's actually client's buying process. And he talks about 4 steps that people go through when they're making a buying decision. So step 1, they wake up in the morning and they feel different than they did yesterday. They realize, what? There's something that I need. And what do we do when we realize that we need something? Well, step 2 is we start to research. And by the way, this is where the problem starts, because the availability of information, particularly in the internet age, has made the research process actually often detrimental to taking action. It makes people procrastinate for a whole bunch of reasons. So once I've got my fill of research, I move on to step 3. I go into buying mode. And this is where the war between buyer acceptance and buyer reluctance wages. But eventually, I make a decision and I spill into what's called the value stage. And the value stage, step 4 in this, is really important because this is the point that one of 2 things either happen. I either come to regret my purchase and I enter into buyer's remorse. For whatever reason, I suddenly realize that the thing that I thought I was going to get out of this, it's not going to happen. But what we really want to happen is you want clients to flip into a state of self-affirmation. We call it the advocacy reflex. So what is this? Well, who here has ever, loved a car and suddenly you sell your car and you buy a new car and suddenly, that old car used to be the best thing ever, but the new car, wow, now that's amazing. If you used to have an iPhone, but you switch over to Samsung and suddenly you're not an Apple fan anymore. You're a Samsung lover and the iPhone is it's passé. This is self-affirmation. It's humans' natural capability to convince themselves of a good decision if the right environmental factors are in place. I think the second part of this is a lot of businesses I meet suffer inefficiencies because they can't get clients to respond to what they're doing. Someone really smart once said to me, every single element of the way that people interact with you, you taught them to do it that way. So the idea behind this is everything you do, every way that your clients interact, the way that they respond to your business, how they get back to you by email, when they phone you, how they phone you, the kind of emails they send you, the time they send the emails, they do it because you train them to do it. I remember an advisor once turned around to me and said, Stu, how can I get my clients to stop phoning me on the weekend? And the answer is just stop answering the phone. They'll stop pretty quickly. If you can get around the idea that what happens in the first 90 days after you bring a client on board across 5 different touch points that you have with a client, you'll realize that the path to turning clients from being just clients into advocates can be totally automated, and it can be controlled, and it can be systematized. And it's 5 touch points. They look a bit like this. You have to ask yourself, on those first 90 days, what are you doing to inform your clients, to let them know the key information that will make the path ahead seem easier without overwhelming them? Telling them the right stuff at the right time. What are you doing to pace clients, to let them know where they are in the journey and what's next? What are you doing to excite clients, to paint a picture of the future ahead and keep them moving forward by attraction? What are you doing to delight them? To deliver small touches that make clients happy. A handwritten letter or a welcome pack or a personal check-in after 60 days. Hotels, by the way, they do this really, really well. They are all over this 1%er small touch points. And the final bit in the puzzle is, what are you doing to indoctrinate clients? Now, I know this sounds like a horrible word, but it's purely about teaching the client how to engage with you, what they should watch out for, when they should call you, what's available to them, and what to value. Let me give you the practical side. If you can map it out on paper, you can automate it. So what I do, and what a lot of my clients do, is I think there's a sheet of paper you can buy at IKEA. It's like $7 and a bunch of pens. And just grab some paper, get your team together, get your pens, put it on a big piece of paper, and make it visual. Draw it out. Particularly for the 90-day, I'd say get a piece of paper, write the categories, and then get some Post-it notes and brainstorm. Come up with a bunch of stuff. Work out what to put it in. If you're going to deliver this stuff via your CRM, if you're going to use Xplan or you're going to use something else, whatever it is, make your emails and your videos go out automatically. Have reminders for your team to reach out and make contact, or get really smart with audio messages, or frankly, find an external business who'll do the delivery bit for you. People who'll write the handwritten letters or people who'll send out postcards. I think you've got a choice here. Even if you're still getting a good flow of clients in, I really want you to ask that key question about how you're doing it. Because even if you're in good shape, the landscape is changing, and much of it is changing not because of the way that online business has changed the way that people engage with commerce. Although personally, I think there's merit in the idea that every business now is an online business in some way, but because it's changed the way that we all work and the way that we do business. So I think you've got 2 choices here. You can keep doing things the way you are. You can work hard to get leads in, but you're going to possibly lose the opportunity to automate that journey from suspect to raving fan. And if the fintech predictions are right, there is the potential we're going to see some market share loss because people never become aware of your firm and capability because they're being sort of poached further up the funnel by people who are communicating better in those ways. Or you can get on board. You can start playing in this space now rather than later whilst, it's easy and it's getting harder. And you just start to try new things. And when there's a space, you can try to do it all yourself and start from scratch, make the mistakes other people have. Or you can do it a lot smarter and kind of model what's already working. So tweak it for your business and stand on other people's shoulders. And the shift I'd love to help you make is to go from thinking that the only way to get clients is via the old, more labor-intensive methods to realizing, that the online world has created a second, more powerful means to reach thousands of people who could potentially need what you have to offer. If you can just speak their language, and by working hard once to create a lead flow funnel that's going to work for you whilst you get on with other things. And that shift will also change the way that you engage, because honestly, I don't think anyone wants to deal with an advisor who barely has time enough to organize themselves, let alone take care of their clients and prospects. 3 key lessons from this step. Firstly, being a great advisor isn't enough anymore. You've got to get out there and let people know. Even if you're one of these people who kind of believes in merit, and I'm totally with you, you need to get out there and build something so people can find you. Most people aren't looking for an advisor. They're looking to solve problems. So start talking to them about what the problems are. Don't try and market the way that you sell, especially nowadays. That tends to repel people. Pull marketing is totally the way forward. And look, the big message is take the opportunity to automate your market. The impact of getting this right is you're going to spend less time in the attraction phase, your deal flow increases, you get less effort converting, and your business just does the work of creating advocates instead of you, which is what we're looking for. Okay, cool. Let's kick on like a boss. Let's kick into principle number 2, which is plug and play. Let me hit you up with another case study. Here's another client of mine, Craig, that I absolutely love to work with. Craig and I have known each other, for about 4 or 5 years. I hope there's no background noise. Just got a plane going overhead, so bear with me. We first actually met at an FPA event that we ran ages ago. It was called Elevate. And Craig actually stood on stage and told this awesome story about getting thrown out of a client's house for talking about insurance. The client then phoned him back the next day and apologized. It was a great story. Anyway, Craig became a client on our new program in January this year. And he's really gone on to kick some amazing goals. He's doubled his fees from his financial coaching, which is where he's going with it. And he's doing great. He's getting incredible traction from LinkedIn as well. I think about a month ago, he generated 140 likes from a photo of when his car got broken into. Plus, he started his own brand called True Pride. You should check it out. It's a wonderful website. And frankly, he's a good-looking guy. He's got an amazing partner, and he surfs every day. And he's about 6'10", so he's that guy. Anyway, Craig is also your classic high achiever. We started to work together. We quickly realized that he was working at a pace that, it just wasn't sustainable. He was going to burn out. And Craig's no stranger to hard work. And there are times in a business where you need to put your pedal to the floor. But this was next level stuff. And I think the main problems were, firstly, he had a VA. It was taking him longer to brief and design and tell her what to do than it was to her to do the work. So he's constantly feeding the engine and feeling like he was spending more time organizing her than the other way around. Secondly, he was deep into his email 24/7. And it was making him miserable because if you're in your email, you're generally not efficient. The third problem is he was doing it all. He was designing the processes. He was designing the marketing to every email and often doing it over and over again. How about you? I've just mentioned 3 things there. Which one's most relevant to you? Is your problem that it's taking longer for you to brief staff on how to do things? Is yours deep in the email, distracted, or is it more about the fact that you're the one doing it all? Do you know what Craig's big problem was? The real problem is that he didn't have a system for managing the inevitable need to connect the way that he worked and how he wanted to work with other people to do it. So basically, he was approaching the engagement of staff a bit like an air traffic controller when he should have been approaching it like a commander. So what's the difference between the two? Well, in my mind at least, there's no filter between an air traffic controller and the incoming work. He or she is it. And they need to direct the planes at a micromanagement level to avoid disaster. And I guess that's one of the reasons why it's still seen as one of the most stressful jobs in the world. A commander, on the other hand, is about receiving information, managing the flow of tasks and priorities, and then setting the direction for the ship. You see, Craig's issue was he was managing tasks for his VA, defining each element, recording them into his project management software, everything. We switched him using a 4-step process that we call the VA onboarding to make sure that he defined what he needed from his team, how he wanted to be communicated to, what information he needed on a weekly and a daily basis, and finally, which systems that he'd previously used were now going to be managed by someone else. And we began with email, calendar, and we got Lisa to do a bunch of client onboarding work that were no longer going to sit with him. He was no longer going to do it. And after about a week, after we'd sat down and done this session with his new VA, Lisa, he got on the Facebook group that we run and he recorded this message. He sent us this message. Lisa is an absolute gun. She's mastered my emails already, got less than 10 emails to action at the end of each day since Tuesday. She booked her first appointment for today and has awesome initiative, really excited about the time that it would free up. The following week, he came again onto the Facebook group and said, Lisa prepared 4 vision documents with no errors. I had a seminar in Bendigo, went really, really well, and just finishing off the last of our licensee documents. The ideal work worked really well when I explained the reason behind it to Alison and Lisa. Every meeting next week is in the right allocation of time. And when I saw that, I had a massive smile on my face, did a little Irish jig. Yeah, I was happy about that. And that was in the first couple of weeks alone. The reality is when it comes to working with staff, whether they're outsourced or in-source, and assuming you've hired well to begin with, the difference between having a star performer and a sea anchor, if anyone doesn't know a sea anchor, it's something you put out behind the boat, slows you down, is 100% how well you prepared to plug them into your business and onboard them properly. You see, here's the opportunity. We live in one of the greatest times ever, I think, to be in small business. The things that we can do now as business owners, 20 years ago, were the exclusive remit of large organizations that could afford the wages to employ specialists. But nowadays, it's possible for small businesses to access resources that previously, only large companies could afford. Now, add to the fact, if you're a small business, you can move more quickly. As in, you can have an idea, you can test it and get something out there in a week instead of 6 months. You've got a market that is just begging you to have a go. For example, 20 years ago, if you wanted to build a commercial website, you were looking at $5 million, a team of 10 engineers working for about a year, and a management function to look after it. Now, you can have a website up and running like Craig did in a weekend at no cost. And if you've taken on board the stuff we spoke about earlier about, focus on what people want, what they're looking for, and you've got a good message, well, you can be getting clients in the door the following week. You can, like I did, you can get a statistics professor from the Ukraine to analyze your research project to make conclusions that, frankly, I wouldn't have found in a month of Sundays. Or you could get a travel consultant and a graphic designer to pull together a full color brochure present to a retiring client a week after they came to ask you if they can afford their round-the-world trip. That was a true story. Running a session for Hill Ross, and an advisor called Murray told that story. You could go, do you know what? You could go a little bit more mundane. Just find someone to put together a brochure, do some editing, edit your videos, pull together a logo, design an online calculator as we've done numerous times, build your members site, 100 other tasks that you may currently be doing, but if you're honest, you probably should stop. The freelance economy is there, and it's waiting to make life easier for you and increase your profit margins. I'm assuming that if you had more time in your week, you'd know how to apply it to increase your revenue, if that's where you're looking for. All you have to do is get onto it. The fact is, as a small business, you can pivot, you can twist, you can turn, and you can find opportunities that large organizations would take months in meetings, committees, and other bureaucracy to sign off on. And in doing so, you can be part of the opportunity to really drive the industry forward. Focus on delivering better outcomes for clients, and frankly, you can be a rock star at the same time. If you can't plug and play, though, the opposite is true. The future of work is something called the Hollywood system. In making movies, studios don't employ massive teams of technicians, actors, directors, or other specialists. The model went out the window, and many futurists suggest we're seeing something similar occur in the workforce. Instead, what they do, animate videos, says Nathesha. Instead, what you can do, what Hollywood does, is they pull together the right people whose skill sets suit a particular project or a film, and can help that studio get the specific outcome they want. So the skills for that exact task, instead of trying to get generalists to adapt. Then when the movie is filmed and it's done, everyone heads off to the next project and a new team is formed. That's what I'm talking about. And it's got the opportunity to change the way that you approach, marketing your business, the way you deliver value, how you get to a place where you can be the GM instead of the one doing it all without having to spend, a wage bill, which is the size of Netwealth's online marketing spend. So the bottom lines are, start with an audit. Look, sit down and work out what are all the things you do, work out what you're great at, and work out what's going to drive you forward, and then find other people to outsource the other or delegate the stuff to. Employ a really structured onboard process to train them, and then get them building the processes in behind you, often using technology, video, and all that other stuff that, if you've worked with people overseas, just becomes second nature. The two extremes here are really simple. On one hand, you have a business that continues to either make do or employ physical staff to do things, potentially, well, not even physical, same location, getting generalists to undertake specialist work. Or on the other hand, you can develop the means to plug in the right people at the right time. So you get clear on what they do and what you do, and you systematize the heck out of the way you're on board and transfer knowledge. Let's move on. Let's summarize the key lessons. Number one, you can't do it all. If your plan is to grow, it's really, really important that you're able to give up things. Stop doing the work for those who are meant to do the work. Don't get generalists doing specialist work, because the outcome is going to be more expensive and less and lower quality. And being able to plug in new resources into your firm, I think, is as important as being able to attract new clients and manage your existing. Cool. I'm going to crack on to principle 3. And this one's all about hacking time. But here's the message I'm going to deliver to you. Stop typing. Let me explain that. I'm going to go really specific. I'm going to go very direct on a tech aspect. And I'm going to go deep on one particular issue, which is one of a number that we work on as part of the leverage program. Let me hit you with another case study. This is Jeff Whidden, another member of our program. I love working with Jeff. He runs a really smart multi-site business up in the Central Coast. He's one of these guys who just throws himself in with everything. And one of the things that we sat down and chatted about when we did his first game plan session to kick him off on the program was one of the problems was he just had too much on. In particular, he had a backlog of advice documents, a backlog of file notes, a whole bunch of backlogs of things. And as a result, the business was kind of waiting for him to get things done. 3 problems were jumped out. First one, he just didn't have time to do anything. As a result, everyone was waiting for him. He was the bottleneck. And I think a little bit deep down, he didn't really want to change. But the impact he was having is he just had this ever-growing backlog that could only be solved by long hours if he was doing what he's always done. So what's the real problem here? Well, I think it was that Jeff had all this technology. He had a CRM system to hold the data, a directory structure to hold it all, a word processor so he could type. But you know what? The tech was making it worse, not better. So I kept pushing him to embrace technology. And Jeff isn't an inflexible guy, and he's not a technophobe, but he just didn't get around to it. There was always something else. So we ended up, I think you know how it is. You make a recommendation to a client, you outlay how to make their world better, but still they resist. It's not logical, but it's just the way we are. So eventually we sat there on an online coaching meeting, and I say, hey, are we going to do this? He says, I'll get around to it. So I said, well, here's the thing. I'm going to grab my iPhone, and we're going to dictate a file note right here and now, and we're going to get it done. And I'm going to show you how much better it is. And he looked at me and he said, you're going to make me do this, aren't you? And I said, yeah. He said, yeah, but I really like to type my file notes. It's what I do. And what we did is I introduced him to a 3-step system using a tool called Rev, which is a really great recording app on your phone, which also enables you to send off files to get transcribed, usually within an hour. I gave him a structure for actually putting in front of him and recording file notes off the bat. And secondly, we linked it to Dropbox. So all his file notes would automatically upload. So the team could just grab them almost immediately and start actioning them. And it was crazy. He delivered this file note that apparently he wasn't comfortable doing in 3.5 minutes, and it was textbook. We ran the words through, and we reckon it would have taken him 20 minutes to do it in total. So he went from doing something that took 20 minutes to something that took 3.5 minutes. Next week, he emailed me through, he put in the Facebook group to say, smashing file notes on Rev, 14 done this week. Still lots to do, but getting there. 14 in a fifth, 20% of the time. I think we worked it out. He saved 4 hours that week. And this is one of a whole bunch of tech hacks we're exploring, uncovering, and sharing within the program. Craig actually recently shared one with me that's going to change the way that I manage sort of form communications templates within the team. It's actually one that I'd written off until he reintroduced it to me, which shows the power of case studies. So what's the link with Silicon Valley here, you might be asking? Well, here's the big message. Start using technology and stop letting tech use you. Who came up with the dumb idea that just because someone invented email, a world full of untrained typists would now default to recording every thought, communicating every idea via the medium of a keyboard? No one did. Like many things, it's just what we all defaulted to. They didn't do it in the 50s. If my huge historical knowledge gained from watching Mad Men is right, they had trained professionals who were skilled at being able to record the spoken word in shorthand and then type it up at around 5 times the speed of most mere mortals. And that's sufficient. You typing up file notes, that's not. I could go on and on about this topic, about the way that advisors I meet hamstring themselves day in, day out with the way that they plan out or they don't plan out their years, their months, their weeks, their days, or frankly, the way that we allow technology to interrupt our flow when we need to focus on solving complex financial problems, or how the layout of advice firms, reduces your chances of getting productive work to almost sadistically zero. See, that's another feature of Silicon Valley I really think is worth embracing. The idea that if something's not improving a situation, if it's not adding something vital or taking something unneeded, it doesn't have a place. My philosophy is you can only get so much more efficient. I think 10 to 20% elimination is where you pull the big numbers. Saying no is hard. It's one of the hardest skills to learn as an entrepreneur, and especially if you're someone whose whole motivation is to help others. But if you're going to scale your advice firm, you have to learn how to say no and make it a habit. I think Steve Jobs nailed it when he said, people think focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on, but that's not what it means. It means saying no to the 100 other good ideas that are out there. You have to pick carefully. Innovation is saying no to 1,000 things. Technology can and will help your business and your productivity, but you've got to pick wisely, and you've got to be willing to let go of things along the way. So here's the opportunity. I think life's getting more complex. The world we live in is more detailed and data rich than the one our grandparents grew up with, and probably the one our kids grow up in will probably be even more so. I heard Kevin Kelly talking to Tim Ferriss the other day in his podcast, which is incredible. If you don't listen to it, grab it. It's brilliant. And he made a really great point. He said that despite all the criticism about lack of attention span people have these days, or how we skim information, if you think about it, it's the only rational response to the growing amount of information out there. If you can't skim, what's your option? So the game moving forward is elimination. What you can skim over more quickly so you can go deep on the things that really matter and have the insight to know what they are. There's a reason when you explore the trends that are popular amongst Silicon Valley leaders that the most common ones are, that pop up are saying no, mindful practice, stoicism, simplification, and other practices that are about greater awareness of what's important versus what's time consuming. The bottom line is the path to creating a better advice firm isn't about adding. It's not about adding in more information or more marketing ideas or trying 100 things at once or attracting everyone and their dog into your marketing funnel or about adding more services or implementing a suite of new features in your CRM because the tech provider thinks that more equals better. The answer is often working out what you're doing that's eating up your time versus getting results. We got a process that we run our clients through. We do it with their service offer, but it's just as relevant for your activities and those of your clients. Grab a big sheet of paper and draw two axes, effort on one side, value on the other. Anything that sits in the top left, high value and low effort, do more of that stuff. This is the things that's going to make your business fly. Anything down in the bottom left, the low value, low effort space, you've got a call to make. If it's not hard to do, sure, but is it really something to keep going with? Top right, anything here in the high value, high effort, it's time to start looking for ways to do it differently because your current way is going to be a chain around your neck if you don't. And make sure, frankly, you're charging for this too, because the fastest way to scale an advice business is fees. Anything in the bottom right, low value, high effort space, well, just stop it. Ask the question why you've continued to endure with it, despite the indication that it's not worth doing. Don't continue doing it, thinking otherwise, or you'll find yourself maybe facing your own Steve Jobs moment or Apple moment, and not the good one. The big game here is to flip your service model from one-to-one being the majority of the way you engage with clients to one-to-one being the pinnacle of how you engage. And the way you do that is to replace your time-consuming offerings with automation and one-to-many opportunities, tech-enabled or otherwise. Stop doing things that are average too, and start thinking about the one-percenters. We talked about the hotels do this really well. How to deliver remarkable reviews that clients actually remark about and tell others. So the options here are two. On one hand, you have a chance to continue to add in complexity to your business, trying to find technology to help, but maybe not making the distinction between functional and useful. And what that's going to mean is often that you stay slow, weighed down, and frankly, you're probably going to run out of energy too early. On the other hand, you're going to start to look for practices that actually result in better outcomes, more time, less friction, and you put in place a filter that makes sure that the stuff that gets in your let's do it box only does it because it's good for you, it's good for your business, it's good for your clients, which gives you velocity and lightness of action. Okay, let's summarize the key lessons. First one, Silicon Valley thinking suggests that what you say no to is probably the hardest skill to learn on your way to becoming a world-class entrepreneur. The world wants to sell you their solution. It's up to you to construct the filter. In fact, here's a suggestion. Only subscribe to 3 sources of information. Everything else, newsletters, unsubscribe. Number 3, tech is going to solve issues, but the key here is to know which ones to solve to create the right result. And frankly, the habits that you need to adopt in order to have them in place. And finally, perfection it's taking things away. It's not adding them in. So first things first, I'm not sure what motivated you to come here today, what it was about the content that spoke to where you're at as an advisor or a business owner, or the outcomes you're seeking, or the issues that you're banging up against. But I really, really hope that you've taken sort of from today some insight into how Silicon Valley has changed and is continuing to change the way that business is done, and a little bit of insight into how I'm working with businesses to make it happen. There's about 40 principles that underpin this in terms of an advice firm. We've covered 3 core ones, which are, firstly, automate your marketing. This isn't about having to completely change how you do everything, But it is about realizing that the marketing environment has changed and it's going to continue to change. So it may be time to begin to adjust your approach. We spoke about plug and play. All the resources you need are available like never before. But if you can't systematize that onboarding piece, you're going to struggle to make the leap from small business to leverage business. And finally, stop typing, which kind of led us to that bigger conversation about how the real challenge is to start using technology and stop letting technology use you. One of the common questions I get at this stage is whether every advice firm can go for this kind of leverage model. And the answer, I think, is most definitely not. This isn't going to work for you as a firm if, number one, you really love your old obsolete business model. If that's you, you're probably better off not going for something like this. If you're a business that's kind of struggling to attract clients, or you're under about maybe $30,000 a month of revenue, you probably don't need a scale solution. You probably need some lead gen. I'm happy to provide some suggestions, but most likely I'm going to point you sort of in a direction of that. And I think the third thing is if you're not really willing to put the work in to make it happen, then it's not going to happen. I'm a great believer in work hard once, but you do need to do the work up front to create the model. So look, if you're not in one of those spaces as a business and you are interested in more information, I run a coaching program called the Leveraged Advice Firm that helps businesses get the kind of results we're talking about, which are namely to increase profit, reduce the amount of effort to do so, and just resource up to make it happen. We work across 3 areas, which is namely how to attract new business more easily, how to systematize delivery to existing clients, and really how to assemble the right team and get them firing. The way it works is pretty simple. It's a 12-month program where we work together to define a plan for your business. We deliver you the content needed to implement, and then you get support in terms of coaching from me and peer group support from other firms in the program. And delivery is a blend of one-to-one coaching, mastermind sessions, and a whole bunch of tools, templates, and the like. Generally, I've designed it for 3 kinds of business. If you're at a reasonable revenue, but you're looking for ways to scale up, absolutely, this is the program for you. Number 2, if you're really good with clients, you give good advice, but it all just takes a little bit longer to get things done than you'd like, I can absolutely help you. And if you know what kind of business you want or how you want things to look, but you're missing a few ideas as to how to make it work, then again, I can help. And if you're doing something a little bit outside the box, then doubly so. As a guide, if you get this right, you really should be aiming to increase your revenue by about 30% during the course and reduce your workload by at least 20%. So if you'd like to find out if and how I can help and identify the major constraints in your business, book a call and we'll jump on and talk about your business. And in that session, we'll talk specifically about your business, your situation, and the things you need to do to move forward. And you can book it all by visiting the link, which is calendly.com/stubell/audit. And it's going to take you to a page that looks like that. And if you can't get the link, stay on the line, put your email in the Q&A box and we'll chat. I've got a little bit of time next week, not a bunch of time. But yeah, if you can get a time, pick a time that suits, I'll call you. And that's about it. Hey, do you want to jump into some questions, Keely?
There's a few questions coming through, but to start with, is it good in your opinion, Stuart, to not market if you don't have a good process yet? So if you're not ready to kind of be going on all this stuff, should you wait out or get going with the marketing?
No, I think you should market. I mean, if you look at a lot of what Silicon Valley talks about, they talk about, the opposite. I don't know if anyone remembers that film, The Field of Dreams, which is if you build it, they will come. Silicon Valley believes in the opposite, which is find out if they'll come, then build it. So I think a bad problem to have is if you've built all these processes and systems, you've got nobody coming in. A great problem to have is when you've got a flow of clients and then you need to build the process afterwards. So I think go out there, market, find your angle, and then build the processes in the back. Don't hold back. Put it out there. Another really great benchmark, I think, is Paul Graham, who's one of the greatest sort of startup guys in the world. He says, if you're not embarrassed by your first attempt at whatever you're doing, whether it's a marketing campaign or a tool, then you're waiting too long. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they come up with this great idea and they work on it in the background. But the reality is most offerings, most business plans, they do not survive the first contact with the client. So get it out there. Just get it out there and solve the problems as you go.
So Stuart, what do you think about how advisors can go about finding a great virtual assistant? How would they actually do that, do you think?
I think there's probably, I'm gonna recommend the business I use, which is Grow My Team. I'm not involved with them, but they've got a lot of insight into financial planning. We work with a number of clients of mine, and I really just like the way the guys work. They've got a team over in the Philippines. I think the Philippines is a great resource as well for a whole bunch of reasons. And they've got people on the staff over here. In terms of the hiring, there is a great book by, I think it's Jeff Smart, called The Who. And the premise of the book is 70% of hires fail. And this has a process that you can apply through how you find clients, how you interview them, which switches that paradigm around, which means that 70% of your success, your hires succeed. And I think, I think the real thing, if you're going to go for the VA, you got to realize that you need to give a lot of direction. You need to have some process, and you got to go through the onboarding, because I'd say it's actually harder to work with people overseas if you don't know what you want them to do than it is in the office.
Great. And regardless of who, yeah, I think so. I think a follow-up that I've just thought of is, regardless of what company the advisors find their VA through, what are the things, so kind of your top checklist of things that they should look for in a supplier or in a freelancer that they can, tick box of how will they know that they're going to be kind of a good VA?
I always look for, communication is obviously a big one. If there's going to be a communication gap, then that's probably going to be a challenge to begin with. I always look for someone that's got a level of detail, and I think someone who, during the approach, once I pull up their resume, if it's detailed and it's structured, you kind of know straight away that you're going to be onto something. But as well as, frankly, if you're dealing with people overseas, making sure that they've got the right technology, they've got a good internet connection, that's also something that you wouldn't normally think about, but it's really, really key. And look, the final point I'd make is, make sure you're dealing with, the reason I deal with Grow My Team is because they've got a whole structure about the way that they sort of help me manage the team via chat rooms and a resource. And I think that's also really, really important as well. The final thing I'd add is, if you are going to use overseas staff, it's really important to kind of look at your licensee requirements, because different licensees have different sort of regulations about what can and can't be shared or used. And it's important you're aware of them before you go down that route.
Great. And we did have another question come through, and I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. I think it's Natisha. She asked that she's been doing some YouTube videos and getting about 30 to 40 views on each. Should she persist and keep going with them, or do you think maybe she should pivot and change her strategy there?
It depends on what if she's trying to do lead gen and she enjoys doing it and it's good content, I'd probably keep going. The thing I think one of the things is, if you've got good content, you need to get a understanding of that. Just because you posted it out on social media once, it doesn't mean everybody saw it. So sometimes it's okay to reuse content if it's going to be relevant. If she's enjoying it and she's getting traction, I'd keep going with it. YouTube is growing. People love video. Yeah, probably one of the recommendations I'd make is, make sure when you're approaching recording the video that you're giving people a really clear course of action. So what's the next step? What's the next thing they can do to engage with you or meet with you or get to know about what you're all about? Because a lot of people put marketing content out there, and it's great content, but they don't really ask clients, what am I supposed to do next? Whether it's the next step is to book a call with her or download some of her content or come along to a webinar or seminar. I think the really key thing is you lead people to know, if you like my stuff, do this thing next. And that's how you link together the funnels.
Thanks again. And thank you so much, Stuart.
Thanks very much, Killian. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. And see you soon. So there you have it, guys and girls. That's another podcast for the week, Applying Silicon Valley Mindset. Hope you enjoyed it. If you're after more on this, by the way, go and check out our website, outdere.com.au. Yep, I know it's a bad name, but there's a story behind it, and I love it. audere.com.au, and there's a whole bunch of information there on our blog about sort of this, how to apply it, from everything from service model design and delivery, marketing, finding your hot market, systems, processes, recruiting people. There really is such a dearth of great information this ties into. A reminder, if this is your first time you've listened, don't forget to subscribe, and then you'll find out when new masterclasses and also those quick tactics come out. But other than that, if you have any feedback, by the way, if there's anything you'd like to hear from, or if you know somebody who you think would be absolutely tailor-made for jumping onto one of these with me, sharing their story, alternatively something they're really good at, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at help, H-E-L-P, @outdere.com.au. Otherwise, thanks again for listening, and I'll see you on the next podcast. Bye.